There aren't as many coyotes in Texas now as there were when Pecos Bill was born. But the ones that there are still do plenty of howling at night, sitting out under the sagebrush like thin gray shadows and pointing their noses at the moon. Some of the cowboys around the Pecos River country claim that the oldest coyotes remember the time when Bill lived with them and are howling because they are lonesome for him. It's not that often that coyotes have a boy grow up with them like one of their own family. Bill was pretty unusual from the start. When he was only a few days old, he raised such a fuss about having to drink ordinary milk that his mother had to go and take milk from a mountain lion who was raising baby cubs. Bill's mother was rather unusual in her own way. Before Bill was born, she drove off 45 Indian warriors from the family's covered wagon with an old broom handle. So, borrowing milk from a wild mountain lion was no problem for her. Bill had over a dozen older brothers and sisters for playmates, but they were ordinary boys and girls and no match for him. When Bill was 2 weeks old, his father found a half-grown bear and brought the bear home. "You treat this bear nice now," Bill's father said. The bear didn't feel friendly and threatened to take a bite out of Bill. Bill wrestled the bear and tossed it around until the bear put its paws over its head and begged for mercy. Bill couldn't talk yet, but he patted the bear to show that he didn't have any hard feelings. After that, the bear followed Bill around like a big, flat-footed puppy. Pecos Bill's father was one of the first settlers in the West. There was lots of room in Texas, with so much sky that it seemed as if there couldn't be any sky left over for the rest of the United States. There weren't many people, and it was lonesome country, especially on nights when the wind came galloping over the land, rattling the bear grass and the yucca plants, and carrying the tangy smell of greasewood. However, Bill didn't feel lonely often, with all the raccoons, badgers, and jackrabbits he had for friends. Once he made the mistake of trying to pet a skunk. The skunk sprayed Bill with its strong scent. Bill's mother had to hang Bill on the clothesline for a week to let the smell blow off him. Bill was a little over 1 year old when another family of pioneers moved into the country. The new family settled about 50 miles from where Bill's folks had built their homestead. "The country's getting too crowded," said Bill's father. "We've got to move farther west." So the family scrambled back into their big wagon and set out, the oxen puffing and snorting as they pulled the wagon toward the Pecos River. Bill was sitting in the rear of the wagon when it hit some rocks in a dry stream bed. There was a jolt, and Bill went flying out of the wagon. He landed so hard that the wind was knocked out of him, and he couldn't even cry out to let his folks know. It might not have made any difference if he had, because all his brothers and sisters were making such a racket, and the wagon wheels were creaking so loudly that no one could have heard him. In fact, with so many other children in the family besides Bill, it was 4 weeks before Bill's folks even missed him. Then, of course, it was too late to find him. Young Bill sat there in the dry stream bed a while, wondering what to do. Wherever he looked, there was only the prairie and the sky, completely empty except for a sharp-shinned hawk floating overhead. Bill felt more lonely than he ever had in his life. Then, suddenly, he saw a pack of coyotes off in the distance, eating the remains of a dead deer. The coyotes looked at Bill, and Bill looked at them. These coyotes had never seen a human baby before, and they didn't know quite what to think. Apparently, they decided Bill was some new kind of hairless animal, for one of the female coyotes took a hunk of deer meat in her teeth and trotted over to Bill with it. She put it in front of him and stood back, waiting for him to eat it. Bill had not eaten much raw meat before, but he knew that the female coyote meant well, and he didn't want to hurt her feelings. So he picked the meat up and began chewing. It tasted so good that he walked over and joined the other coyotes. From that time on, Bill lived with the coyotes, going wherever they went, joining in their hunts, and even learning their language. Those years he lived with the coyotes were happy ones. He ran with them through the moonlit nights, curled up with them in their shady dens, and howled with them when they sang to the stars.